Jaime, thank you so much for being on this episode. I love life coaches. I am so excited to have you on. But before we go in, will you just take a quick moment and share with everybody just a little bit about you, your background?
Absolutely. First, thanks for having me. I am a certified transformational coach. I work with individuals, groups, do courses on how to get people unstuck. I spent a good portion of my life, really nearly a decade, in anxiety and depression. And I like to joke that I'm a recovering play it safe-aholic. Because I was working to make my life as safe and certain and really predictable, just to offset the anxiety that I was feeling. And when I learned that there are tools that can actually help you so that the certainty doesn't have to come from just no variations in your life, I just felt like, oh my gosh, why do people not know this stuff? I have to share it. So that's what I do. I help individuals, groups, help get people unstuck.
I love that. And I was reading on your website and everything. I loved how you talked about, like, even just how you came to being the Unstuckologist and how it was like over and over realizing that the common denominator was just feeling stuck. And that brings us to our conversation today, which I'm so excited about because it has been amazing how many women I have spoke with in the last few months who are confessing. And I'm using that word because it really does feel like in their minds, it's like this confession that there is something on their heart. There is this thing that they want to do and they are scared. They don't know how it's going to fit in their life. They don't know if they're capable. They don't know if it's possible. Those feelings of the, who am I, right? Who am I to believe that I could, whatever it is. So that's what we're talking about today. We are talking about when you have that thing on your heart, whether it is a new business, whether it is a new education, whether it's just some big new thing or varying up your life, how we get there, how we make the space. So let's just jump right in. What are some of the things that hold us back? Let's start with like, what are the problems? What holds us back from getting to be able to fully commit and jump into this next version of us, maybe the 2.0 version that we're dreaming of?
Absolutely. I think there's no shortage of ways that we can get ourselves stuck, but they all boil down to an element of fear, right? Fear that we're not going to be able to do it. Fear that we can't trust ourselves, fear that when we get there, we might not like it, fear that we're not skilled enough, fear that we're not going to be able to be consistent, fear that it's going to prove that we really are not as good as we think we are. I mean, there is a bottomless pit of fear. And there's a lot of things that we add on to the fear. We keep ourselves busy. We don't really get clear about what we want. We expect ourselves to be perfect, which can zap the desire to even have or do the thing. But really it comes down to just being willing to sit at the edge of you and think like, okay, this is possible. And why do I want this? And if I did want this, and actually like question the lack of clarity that we have and be able to come from a place of possibility versus I think sometimes we go out just as quickly as we have the dream, like boom, also we've taken away all possibility that it could ever happen. We have like 100 reasons in 1 second of why we can't have it instead of maybe fighting for where we could have it. So I think that's
love that.
One of the major ways.
I think I don't know how anyone listening could not be like, yep, I raise my hand, right? We have all felt some version of one of those or many of those fears that you talked about. So you said one of the first things we can do is sit on the edge and ask, why do I want this? So how do we, everyone's raising their hand saying, yep, okay, I got the fears, like check. So how do we get on the other side of the fear? How do we stop that fear from stopping us?
Yeah, I think first just questioning this idea that it's not okay or normal to feel fear. I think some of us, at least I did, I bought into this idea that if it was meant for me or that it was good or that I was going to be able to do this thing, that I wouldn't be so scared. And the reality, that's not true. The reality is fear is part of the process and that when we engage with our fears and we move through the fears, that we actually like become more equipped to have the thing that we want. So it doesn't actually like take away our ability or our validity in doing it. Actually prepares us, kind of like where it's the training ground for where you want to go. And so if we first just notice the judgment we have against fear, the resistance to feeling the fear or being with the fear, or just looking at it as if it was like, what if it was just wisdom in disguise? If we could normalize the feeling of fear and learn tools to move through it, we would have a much higher rate of success in going after the thing we want.
That's so good. I was talking with a client last week, and she made this comment, maybe I just need to get comfortable with X. And I said, or maybe you need to be okay being uncomfortable, but still doing it anyways. You know, this idea that we think it's supposed to all feel good, easy, effortless, fun all the time. That has not been my experience.
There's nothing in life that comes without discomfort. In fact, what we're experiencing now is, say, if you're not chasing a dream, there is discomfort. You're just used to it. And so it's becoming comfortable in the discomfort, normalizing, because what happens is we think like, oh no, there's discomfort, something's wrong. And then we start to, because we're afraid of our fear, we don't want to be with our fear and nurture what's happening there. We start to try to like escape the fear. And what happens when we try to do that, it actually just builds to anxiety. And when we don't want to be with our anxiety, all that does is build up to panic. And so instead we can go, okay, I'm uncomfortable. And if I could just actually be with it and actually remind myself what it is that I am committed to, who am I becoming as part of the journey of wherever this goal that we have, right? It can ground us. And then doing some mindset work, doing some questioning, some self-acceptance, some self-forgiveness as we move through the fear can really kind of, instead of a goal feeling like it's the hardest thing in the entire universe, it can actually feel like, oh, this is okay. And there's going to be moments of ease and flow and moments where you want to just pack it all in, and that's okay too. Right?
I love
it's
that.
It's going to be ebb and flow.
Right. It's okay to feel all of it. And
All of
and
it.
to not be afraid of feeling all of it. So you spoke on being okay sitting with the fear or being with the fear and not pushing it away. So
Yes.
would it be safe to say that like examples of pushing away that fear is either numbing out, and that could be, you know, scrolling on social media, binging the Netflix, whatever it is for that person that allows them to just check out. But it could also be deciding that it won't work. Basically creating a list in your head of like, you know what, I don't have the time, I don't have the energy, I don't have the resources, and so we quit before we start. Would those be forms of kind of pushing the fear away?
Absolutely. We're wired to look for our limitations, where things won't work out, where it's dangerous. That's normal. That's going to happen. Yeah. But when we are focused on trying to prevent bad things from happening, we're automatically going to be sitting in more of the fears versus looking to produce what we do want. It's a very different mindset. I like to use the example of if I was committed to creating an intimate, deep relationship with my husband is very different than me trying to prevent a divorce. They're two different come-froms. They're two different mindsets. They're two different lists of things that I would do and not do and be and not be. And the same thing is true of any of our goals. So when we look at what am I trying to prevent? We can even just being with it. That makes sense. That's good. That's good logic. That's good information, good wisdom. And I can pull that wisdom out and actually be okay, so now what do I want to produce? I don't have to ignore it. I don't have to gaslight it. I don't have to go no, I'm totally equipped. I may not be. That's okay. That's good wisdom. What then would I need to become more equipped? But when we're afraid of the fear, we miss out on the wisdom of the fear that it can actually bring us closer to our goal rather than farther away. So we can easily shut it down. We can get super busy. We could create chaos in our life so that we don't have time to work on our goals. There's 1,000 ways we can take ourselves out and As soon as you think you figured out the way that you like to take yourself out, well, your ego's tricky. It'll give you something new to work through.
It's so true.
And that's okay. That is all part of the process. It's all, you only want the goal because it's indicative of something that wants to happen inside of you. And as long as we're doing the work that's inside of you, right, the movement towards the goal becomes easier.
Yes. I love that. Okay, so we start with an idea, with something on our heart. And fear is going to show up, and that is normal and that is natural. Fear is going to show up because we truly are hardwired to try to stay in our comfort zone. Our brain, that hippocampus, is trying to keep us safe. And wrong or right, it thinks as long as we stay in the same, we must be safe. So we have to recognize that we have to push outside of that comfort level so that we can reach to those next places. So they get to this point where they're like, okay, I've worked through my fears. I've recognized what's stopping me. New things will stop me, but I'm going to address and acknowledge those, and I'm going to keep moving forward. And I believe that for so many, one of the biggest concerns, and I'm not going to use the word fear, even though it is a fear, but it's a concern and it's justified. This is a very real concern, is how am I going to fit this into my life and not create suffering or problems? So if they have a new business idea, or they have maybe they want to get higher education, or whatever it is, they have this new thing that they want to go after. The biggest concern is, how do I still show up in all the other areas that need me and not fall apart or fail somewhere? So what do you say to that woman?
I say, first of all, that's great wisdom. To give everything to this new interest and to starve it from the other things that make your life fulfilling isn't a great equation. And at the end of the day, we all have the same amount of time. We know what our energy level is. We know the commitments that we can make. The point isn't to magically find this like chunk of time that's just sitting off in the junk drawer that you forgot about. It's actually looking at, who do I want to be? And actually start from there. Like, who do I want to be as a person? I know I have these goals. Who do I want to be as I work towards these goals? Who do I want to be in my relationship? Who do I want to be in my finances? Who do I want to be in my health? And if I can actually find the thing that I want to be, like, I like to pick one character trait per like each goal set that I do. And I use that as a North Star. So if I'm trying to scale a specific part of my business, and maybe my character trait that I'm working on, like my inside being goal that I have, because I think that everything has an inside and an outside goal. And if I pick that inside goal, I can use it as my North Star. So if mine is to be connected and I'm building this new goal, how can I be connected as I do each of these things? So in one moment, I can be connected in my business and also go like, you know what? I'm also going to cut this off at this time. I'm going to put boundaries, guardrails around it, because it makes no sense to steal from the other areas of my life to pour into the other. But I also think there is a lot of questioning that can happen, because we're real good salespeople to ourselves to say that we don't have the time or the effort or the space for it. And what I like to ask myself, without getting into like perfectionism, because I know that's always, hiding there for me, is to ask, if someone gave me $1 million to get this thing done, could I do it? Like if it was, okay, I want to start this morning routine. Maybe you have a new goal, right? And you're like, I'm gonna start getting up every morning. I'm really gonna work on consistency, and I'm gonna get up for this morning routine. And let's say I notice that I'm hitting the snooze button and I'm not getting up. No bad. But I can look and be like, okay, if someone was paying me $1 million would I have the time to do it? Would I have gotten myself to bed last night? Absolutely, I would have. So I like to ask myself that question, and you can really flesh out what is actually a story that feels true and what is actually reality. Is like, if someone was paying $1 million, would I have that closet cleaned out? Would I have that new chapter of the book written? Would I?
That is so good.
Right, you can call BS on yourself.
Yes. I love that so much. And that is such a simple question that we can ask in every situation. And I just love how you're right. That flushes out and gets us to maybe what the real cause I'll say it this way, maybe what the real block is. And then we can address that block. So if I'm looking at it and I say, oh, I've been, I like how you said clean out the closet, right? Because we all have those little things that we've been wanting to get to forever. And then, just for whatever reason, they never seem to be able to get to them. But if you were being paid $1 million, could you get to cleaning out that closet? Yes. And now we start to figure out, okay, well, what's really been the problem? Where do I carve that time? So when we're looking at this new thing that is on our heart, some things that I think about is, number one, we need to understand that it is not nearly as much about speed as it is about forward motion, about making progress. And I think that it's so easy to get caught up in how fast we're supposed to be able to achieve it instead of that we're just supposed to make progress. And that gets us stuck, right? Because if I'm looking at this new thing I want to do and I set these deadlines and think, well, I need to accomplish it by X time, that might work for someone else, but it doesn't necessarily work for me and my life and the season of life that I'm in. So I think one of the first things is when we're looking at where am I going to fit this in, we just have to stop and say, it might take me a lot longer than other people. I might be on a slower track because I am doing a lot of other things, and that's okay. To the mama who is got young kids at home and is trying to start her business, and she's, trying to take care of the home and relationships and a million other things, it is going to be a slower process. I should say this. It should be a slower process. But so many of us thought we were supposed to keep up at the same pace as people who were not stay-at-home moms at the same time. And then we couldn't understand why we were burning out. I mean, when I look back, I think one of the biggest mistakes in my early years, and, I've told this story a million times, everyone on the podcast knows, of reaching my burnout level, was I thought I was supposed to keep up at the same speed of these people who I was watching, who, when I look back, I'm like, that was a single guy in his 20s who literally could spend all of his time working on his business. And I thought I was supposed to keep the same speed. I thought I was supposed to be on track.
Meanwhile, you can't even empty the dishwasher without having to stop 14 times to take care of your children. But somehow we think that you should be able to move mountains. And the reality is that we judge our pace and put unfair expectations on ourselves. And if you look at it there is a ecosystem for growth. And when we push ourselves into that space of chaos, we do not grow. And so being able to go, oh, okay, I said I was going to have this done by this date. I'm curious why I didn't get it done. I'm going to look for my BS story, right? But I'm also going to be like, oh, I was under the misunderstanding that this was going to take me this much time.
Yes.
And that I would be able to actually not be interrupted right? And so you get to, I like to say that you are the rule maker and you get to be the rule renegotiator. So if I think that this project, I'll be able to, think of writing some curriculum that I've written or writing courses. I might be able to get an outline just downloaded, but then it might take me 6 months to actually get through it. And I can judge my pace because I am not somebody who's wired desire to ever just be able to sit down and do massive brain work and large chunks of time. It's not my jam. But if I am judging my pace, I'm identifying, now I'm not just judging my pace, I'm making the pace mean something about me. And then now I'm stuck in this resistance towards this thing, which is going to make me getting to where I want to go 10 times harder. So if we want to get ourselves good and stuck, the best thing you can do is identify with it like it's you and judge it. And that's akin to lacing up the cement shoes and expecting yourself to run a marathon. Not fun, not easy, going to make it so much harder. But if we can separate it out, release it and look for the judgment of what am I making this about me? And if I could actually forgive myself for the misunderstanding there, then I can take aligned action. But when we're trying to take action out of punishment, woof, not fun.
Oh, so true. So we recognize the parameters we're maybe putting on ourselves or the rules we are forcing ourselves to live by, and we check them. Like, are these even fair rules? Do I like these rules? Do I want these rules? Do I need to, as you said, renegotiate these rules? One of those being the timeline that we're giving ourselves. The other is where we're going to fit things in and how we're going to do it. I think where we're going to fit things in, if we're going for something new, we need to come at it with a very creative perspective of like, okay, well, where could I fit this? What would be the craziest way to do it? And not believe that it's supposed to only fit in certain quadrants that seem reasonable, especially with the more that there is in our lives, the more we need to be creative with where we find the time to do these things. So I think that's a big part. I think about when my kids were still really, really little, one of those creative places, and this actually goes into the second thing of like, how are we going to get the support? Often we're setting an expectation that I'm going to do a new thing, but I need to do it at the same pace as everybody else. I need to do it alone, and it needs to only fit in where it's not an inconvenience to anybody else. That is an absolute recipe for disaster, right? And for us to give up way too soon. Where if I came at that from a completely different approach and I said, okay, I'm doing this new thing. I'm okay with that. My speed is going to be very different than others, and progress is my goal, not speed. If I say, okay, creatively, like where could I fit this in? And how could I get support? And one of those things when my kids was really little was after realizing I was doing it the wrong way first and figuring out this is not working, going to my husband and saying, okay, I need your help. I need you to help me find this time. And this is my idea. Can we give it a try? That's another thing. Everything can be a trial. Nothing is permanent. We can test things. And so we put it out there of 2 or 3 nights a week, right after dinner, you're going to take the kids and I'm going to go lock myself away so that I can have some uninterrupted time to make progress. And you're going to be in charge of playing with them, bedtime routine, getting them to bed. And it was really hard at first. Like I could hear things and I knew exactly how to solve it. And I think, oh, I should just go help. And at first I did. And then I started forcing myself like, no, you are robbing them of their time to be able to figure this out and solve this, and feeling resentful because I'm being interrupted. But that became so powerful. I mean, anyone with small kids trying to run a business from home, the idea of getting 4 uninterrupted hours is like unheard of. So to all of a sudden have I have from 6 to 10 o'clock where I'm just able to work, it was incredible. So that's definitely been my experience. What have you found for you that's really worked?
For me, I think in terms of goals and doing stuff, I like to think of things in terms of experiment. It takes the pressure off.
Yes.
And I like to be like, oh, I'm going to experiment with this versus, because it feels sometimes, we identify with it, we think that the thing that we're offering is us. Like our service that we're offering is us, and it gets real sticky. So when I think of it as like, oh, this is just an experiment, my perfectionistic part starts to relax a little bit because an experiment is not meant to be perfect. So that's like a rule right there, is like that things need to be done perfect, or things need to be done quickly, or things need to be done all at once, or like we don't start things unless we can finish them. All of these like little rules that they start to flush up. When you start to feel the discomfort, you can look for like, hey, where's the rule? And it starts to create some more ease. And another question I like to ask myself is, if this could feel light and easy and fun, what would that look like?
Yes.
Because we often create from a place that we think that it's going to require for us to feel like it's miserable because, like we're writing a term paper, and sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. Like, let's be real. But there's other times where it's like, oh, there's resource. I'm sitting here victim to the story that I think that this growth has to look like X, like me getting up and doing it in the middle of the night. In reality, like if this could feel fun and light and good, what would it look like? Because sometimes that means like, you know what? It would be to take the kids to the library, let them play on the computers there or the little toys or read the books, and I'll sit here with my laptop. And that would feel fun. Or maybe I will get a babysitter and I will go to sit at Starbucks and I'll not leave until I have done this thing, right? Or I'm going to take a picture of the room that I'm organizing and I'm going to send it to 4 friends and be like, this is what I'm doing. I need your support and I'm going to send you an after picture. But like, think of it like little experiments and making it fun and easy, because you're like, we try to come from a purely adult mind, and there's part of us that's going kicking and screaming. But when we can incentivize it, like, could this be fun for the part of me that's like inner child fun? How could I incorporate that in that would actually give me the space and the time? And I think one of the things you said was so good, this idea of sitting there listening to your husband and the kids and knowing that you could go in and write like an air quote fix it, and choosing to not. Because what you realize is that this growth was for you, but it was also for your husband, and it was also for your children, and it was also for your relationship between you and your husband. Growth doesn't just happen in the area that you are choosing, like that goal. It's like peeing in the pool. The pee doesn't stay in one little area. It goes everywhere. So when you choose, right? So when you choose a goal that requires that the family show up for you in a different way, or for you to ask or create space for yourself, knowing that the ripple effect is for everyone, not just you. Same goes for when we choose to not grow an area that life is calling us to grow in. Other people are paying the price, not just us.
That's so good. I love that. That is, I think, one of the most beautiful takeaways is when we hold ourselves back, when we stop from that thing that is on our heart, we are robbing the world of this special thing that it needs. And I truly believe that. And so we need to be comfortable being uncomfortable. We need to be okay accepting that doing the thing will feel hard. It will feel scary. It doesn't have to all the time. There are so many times where it can feel fun and wonderful. Like, I'm so in agreement with you. But being brave is not doing something with the absence of fear. That's actually not bravery. Being brave is doing something scared. That is bravery, right? And so to go after our dreams, it takes being brave.
It does. And there's an equation of bravery where it develops self-trust, because we can also force ourselves into doing something that we are terrified to do and actually do damage, right? Where, have you ever noticed, like, you do something really scary and then the price you pay is that maybe you can't actually move on something for like 2 weeks later. Like, you just like kind of go into shutdown mode. So I want you to think that there is like this equation of having one foot in the chaos and one foot in order creates this beautiful place where growth can happen. And if we have both of our feet in the order, we're not growing. And if we have both of our feet in chaos, we're just overwhelmed and we're not growing either. We're just, so the great part is like, yes, we're going to move through the fear, but there are tools to move through it in a way that builds self-trust and resiliency rather than like burnout, shame, shut down, that sort of thing.
So good. Okay, so for the woman who's like, all right, I'm ready, I'm going to do this. What are your best tips for her of like, okay, here's how to do this in a way to be able to stay in that right space?
I think first get really clear about what you want and why you want it. And even more important, who do you want to be as you do it? Because we often think that the goal is going to turn us into this new thing, right? And if that's the point, we're actually going to meet a lot more resistance, a lot more fears as we go, versus embodying who we think this end product of this thing is going to be, doing that now. So if I think that I'm going to be more confident on the other side of this business or this venture or this project, the reality is that I'm just going to meet a lot of resistance and probably do a lot of self-sabotaging as I go. But if I can actually go, oh, what's eroding my confidence right now? I keep that same goal set, but I actually work on developing confidence from a place of, am I being trustworthy with myself and others? Like, am I honestly keeping my word, my promises? Like, am I connecting with other people? Am I allowing myself to be seen? Am I seeing myself, these components of belonging and trust? Am I thinking creatively? Am I challenging some of these fearful, these thoughts? Because there's the element of confidence, right? And being able to develop the confidence as we go means that we can actually move into having the thing. But often we think, I'm going to do this thing, then I'm going to feel more confident. And what happens when we actually meet that thing? It's a flash in the pan that we feel confident, or we feel like, oh, there's my enoughness for 3 seconds. Now I need a new goal. And the reality is like, oh, if we start with who we are, so we reverse it. Instead of like, do the things, I'll have these results and I'll be this new person. Start the opposite. I'm going to be this person. I'm going to work on actually developing that character in me. And from that, I'm going to take aligned action, which is doing the things. And then from that aligned action, I'm going to have the results that I actually want. But I can flip the equation so it's not birthed out of self-punishment, but actually self-healing.
That is so good. So good. Thank you so much. This has been
Absolutely
amazing. I feel like I could go on and on and on and on with you, but this has been so incredible. I feel like there are so many great takeaways. And so thank you, Jaime, for being on the podcast with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Jaime gave us so many incredible insights, and I wanted to just share some of my favorite ones with you. These are like my big takeaways, the things that I'm thinking about even still, because that actually got recorded a couple weeks ago, and now I'm bringing this recap together. So I love this idea, and I want to start with like bringing it back to respecting your season. That was such an important lesson for me, and I just want to tell you that it is okay if it takes you longer. Respect the season of life that you're in and understand that yours isn't going to look like theirs, because we're all in different seasons. We're all at different places. The next thing is, I love this idea of letting it be an experiment. This is something that has helped me so much. So I say it a little bit differently, but I love the way that Jaime said it. Like, let everything be an experiment. I look at everything in my mind as this is version 1.0. And so I'm going to get out 1.0. I'm going to do 1.0, but I'm expecting to have the opportunity to create 2.0 or 3.0. It can keep adjusting, changing. I can walk away from it completely if that's what I decide. There is so little that is actually permanent. And often fear is holding us back because there's this story that is playing out in our minds saying, oh my gosh, if you fail, it's over. But it's not actually over. It's just, okay, it's time to pivot. So I love that idea. I love the idea of sitting with the fear, just being okay with being afraid and not feeling bad about that, but rather just acknowledging it and being like, okay, where's this coming from? What are we going to do with this? And then, if you could let this feel light and fun, right? Like there are so many things in my life that I'm specifically thinking about where I'm like, ooh, yeah, how do I walk into that and say, how do I make it more fun? And I've had so much fun with this over the years. Sometimes it's about like, I'm going to light a candle and have special chocolates because, I got to do my quarterly taxes and it's no fun. And I'm just going to make the mood feel more enjoyable. Or maybe it's a reward after the fact, but just how could you make something from the most mundane, the thing that you dread, all the way to something really complicated? How could you make it look more light and fun? I just love that. Okay, so what a great episode. I hope you loved it too. I will have another incredible episode for you next week, all about helping you do less but better so that we can balance this busy with just a little bit more joy and fun. Okay, thank you so much for being part of the podcast and listening. It, as always, and will always mean the world to me. I'm so grateful that you spent this time with me, that you let me in your ears. So thank you. I hope you loved this, and I'll see you next time.